The dust-coated stagecoach rattled to a stop in front of Hemley's general store, and Sophia Nielson pressed her forehead against the smudged window, her heart pounding with dread rather than the anticipation she'd felt just 3 weeks earlier on her journey west. Back then, she'd been full of hope. Now, in the unforgiving summer of 1878, she was simply merchandise being delivered to yet another buyer. "End of the line for you, Miss Nielson," the driver called as he yanked open the door. His weathered face showed a flicker of sympathy that vanished as quickly as it had appeared. "Welcome to Springerville, Arizona Territory." Sophia gathered her meager belongings, a carpetbag containing 2 dresses, a nightgown, and the few personal items she'd managed to keep, and stepped down into the dusty street. The small frontier town buzzed with activity despite the oppressive heat. Men in worn hats and dusty boots moved purposefully between the saloon, the bank, and the various shops lining the main street. "You must be the new bride." A portly man with a pencil-thin mustache approached, mopping his brow with a handkerchief. "I'm Harold Whitman, attorney for Mr. Pearson. He's expecting you at his home. This way." Sophia followed silently, her throat too tight for words. Just 3 weeks ago, she'd arrived in Tucson as the mail-order bride of Franklin Miller, a cattle rancher who died of fever 2 days after their hasty wedding. With no money to return east and no family to take her in, she'd been horrified to discover that Miller had outstanding debts. His creditors had quickly determined that his young widow was his only remaining asset of value. Now she was being transferred to Thomas Pearson, a man she'd never met, who had agreed to take on a portion of Miller's debt in exchange for a bride. The entire arrangement made her stomach turn, but she had no choice, not if she wanted to survive. Whitman led her to a 2-story house at the edge of town. It was well-maintained but austere, lacking any touches that might make it feel like a home. The attorney rapped sharply on the door, which swung open to reveal a thin man with cold eyes and graying hair. "Mr. Pearson, I've brought your bride," Whitman announced, handling Sophia over like a parcel. Thomas Pearson's gaze swept over her, assessing her as one might a horse at auction. "She'll do," he said finally, handing Whitman an envelope. "The final payment as agreed." Sophia's cheeks burned with humiliation as the men completed their transaction. Her new husband ushered her inside, closing the door firmly behind them. "The wedding will be tomorrow," Pearson said without preamble. "I've arranged for Reverend Collins to perform the ceremony at noon. Until then, you'll stay in the guest room upstairs. I expect meals at 6 in the morning and 6 in the evening. I don't tolerate laziness or complaints." "Mr. Pearson," Sophia managed, her voice barely above a whisper, "may I ask what your business is?" "I own the bank," he replied curtly. "And now I own you. Remember that and we'll get along fine." For 2 miserable weeks, Sophia existed in a state of numb compliance. She cooked Pearson's meals, cleaned his house, and endured his cold, impersonal presence. The wedding had been a joyless affair with only Whitman and the Reverend as witnesses. Pearson had not kissed her at the conclusion of their vows, merely nodded as though completing a business deal which, Sophia supposed, was exactly what it had been. She learned from her trips to the general store that Pearson was both feared and respected in Springerville. His bank held mortgages on most of the businesses and many of the farms and ranches in the surrounding area. He was not known for mercy when payments were late. On this particular morning, Pearson departed early for the bank, leaving Sophia with orders to visit the general store for supplies. She walked slowly, savoring her brief freedom, nodding politely to the few women who acknowledged her presence. Most kept their distance, seeing her as Pearson's possession rather than a person in her own right. At the general store, Sophia was carefully counting out the money Pearson had given her when the door swung open, bringing with it a gust of wind and the jingle of spurs. She glanced up to see a tall man silhouetted against the bright sunlight. "Zachary Turner, as I live and breathe," Hemley, the storekeeper, called out. "Heard you were back in these parts." The newcomer stepped fully into the store, and Sophia caught her breath. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with sun-bronzed skin and dark hair that curled slightly where it brushed his collar. His features were strong but not harsh, and when he smiled at the storekeeper, it transformed his face entirely. "Just got back yesterday," he said, his voice a pleasant baritone. "The cattle drive took longer than expected, but we got a fair price in Kansas City." "Good to hear it. Your father's been talking about nothing else for weeks," Hemley chuckled. "Oh, let me introduce you to our newest resident. This is Mrs. Pearson, the banker's wife." Zachary Turner turned toward Sophia, and his blue eyes met hers with an intensity that made her heart skip. He touched the brim of his hat in greeting. "Madam." "Mr. Turner," she acknowledged, quickly averting her gaze back to her purchases. "Zach here runs the Turner Ranch with his father," Hemley explained. "Finest cattle operation in the territory, if you ask me." "You're too kind, Mr. Hemley," Zachary said, though his eyes remained on Sophia. "Mrs. Pearson, are you originally from Arizona?" "No," Sophia replied softly. "I'm from Boston." "Boston?" Zachary's eyebrows rose. "That's quite a journey. What brings a Boston lady to our humble Springerville?" Before Sophia could formulate a suitable answer, the store door opened again and Thomas Pearson entered. His gaze immediately locked onto his wife speaking with the cowboy, and his expression darkened. "Mrs. Pearson," he said coldly, "I expected you home by now." "I was just finishing, Mr. Pearson," Sophia replied, hastily gathering her purchases. Pearson nodded curtly to the other men. "Hemley." "Turner." "Pearson," Zachary replied, his tone noticeably cooler than when he'd been speaking to Sophia. The banker took Sophia's packages from her hands. "I'll carry these. Come along." As Sophia followed her husband out of the store, she felt Zachary Turner's eyes on her back. For the first time since arriving in Springerville, she felt a flicker of something other than despair. That evening, as she prepared dinner, Pearson stood in the kitchen doorway watching her with narrowed eyes. "I saw you talking to Turner at the store," he said abruptly. "He was merely being polite," Sophia replied, careful to keep her voice neutral. "I don't want you speaking with him again." Sophia's hands stilled over the vegetables she was chopping. "May I ask why? The Turners and I have business conflicts," Pearson said tightly. "They refused to mortgage their ranch through my bank, went all the way to Tucson for financing instead. Disrespectful." "I see," Sophia murmured, though she didn't. "Just remember who paid for you," Pearson added coldly. "I won't have my property consorting with my enemies." The words struck Sophia like physical blows. Property. Paid for. The bitter reality of her situation washed over her anew. She had exchanged one form of bondage for another, with no end in sight. Over the next several days, Sophia found her thoughts returning to Zachary Turner with alarming frequency. She told herself it was merely because he'd shown her simple human courtesy, something sadly lacking in her daily life, but deep down, she knew it was more. There had been something in his eyes when he looked at her, something warm and genuine that had touched a part of her she thought had died along with her dreams. A week after their meeting at the general store, Sophia was hanging laundry in the backyard when she heard the distinctive sound of hoofbeats approaching. Peering around the corner of the house, she was startled to see Zachary Turner dismounting from a magnificent chestnut horse. He tied the animal to the hitching post and strode toward the front door. Curiosity overcame caution, and Sophia moved quietly to the side of the house where she could hear the conversation that would follow. Pearson answered the door himself. "Turner, what brings you here?" "Business, Pearson," Zachary replied crisply. "The Cattlemen's Association is organizing a collective shipment east next month. We're inviting all local businessmen to invest. The returns should be substantial. And why would I invest in a venture led by the Turners?" Pearson's voice dripped with disdain. "Because you're a businessman and this is good business," Zachary countered smoothly. "Politics aside, you understand profit. The details are all here." There was a rustle of papers followed by a pause. "I'll consider it," Pearson finally said. "Now if that's all, actually, there is one more thing," Zachary interrupted. "The town's organizing a harvest festival in 2 weeks. My mother asked me to extend a personal invitation to you and Mrs. Pearson." Sophia's heart leapt at the mention of her name. "Mrs. Pearson and I are quite busy," the banker replied coldly. "That's a shame. My mother was hoping to introduce herself to your wife. Not many newcomers in Springerville, especially Eastern ladies. She thought Mrs. Pearson might appreciate some female companionship." There was a long silence before Pearson responded. "I'll think about it. Good day, Turner." "Good day, Pearson. Please give my regards to your wife." The door closed and Sophia quickly returned to her laundry, her mind racing. She had just pinned the last sheet to the line when she felt a presence behind her. Turning, she found herself face to face with Zachary Turner, who had apparently walked around the side of the house. "Mrs. Pearson," he said quietly, tipping his hat. "Mr. Turner," she replied, her heart pounding, "you shouldn't be here. My husband is inside reviewing my proposal," Zachary finished for her. "I only need a moment of your time." Sophia glanced nervously toward the house. "What is it? Are you all right?" he asked bluntly. The question, so simple yet so loaded with meaning, nearly brought tears to her eyes. No one had asked about her well-being since she'd arrived in Arizona. "I'm managing," she answered carefully. Zachary's blue eyes searched her face. "People talk in small towns, Mrs. Pearson. I've heard things about how you came to be here." Shame washed over her. "I should go inside." "No, please," he said, reaching out but stopping short of touching her. "I'm not judging you, quite the opposite. I wanted to tell you that if you ever need help, any kind of help, my family's ranch is just 5 miles north of town. The big white house with the red barn." Before Sophia could respond, the back door opened and Pearson stepped out. His face darkened with rage when he saw Zachary. "What are you doing on my property, Turner?" he demanded, striding toward them. "Just admiring your fine home, Pearson," Zachary replied smoothly, stepping back. "I was raised to always compliment the lady of the house on her garden when visiting." "Get out," Pearson snarled, "and don't come back." Zachary touched his hat brim once more to Sophia. "Mrs. Pearson, it was a pleasure. I hope to see you at the Harvest Festival." He walked away with unhurried strides, mounted his horse, and rode off without a backward glance. As soon as he was out of sight, Pearson rounded on Sophia. "What did he say to you?" he demanded. "Nothing of importance," she replied, working to keep her voice steady. "He was being polite." Pearson gripped her arm painfully. "I told you to stay away from him. He approached me, Thomas. I couldn't very well be rude. You're my wife. You'll do as I say." His fingers dug deeper into her flesh. "I paid good money for you, and I won't have Turner turning your head." That night, for the first time since their marriage, Pearson came to her bedroom. His advances were rough and impersonal, his touch devoid of any tenderness. Sophia endured it as she had endured everything else since arriving in Arizona by retreating deep inside herself, to a place where no one could reach her. Afterward, as Pearson slept, Sophia gazed out the window at the star-filled Arizona sky, a plan slowly forming in her mind. She couldn't continue living this way, being passed from one owner to another like a piece of property. She would find a way out, even if it meant striking out alone into the wilderness. The following morning, Pearson left for the bank earlier than usual, mentioning that he would be traveling to Tucson on business and wouldn't return for 2 days. The moment he was gone, Sophia began to prepare. She gathered what little money she had managed to save, pennies and nickels hidden in a small cloth pouch tucked inside her hairbrush. She packed a single change of clothes and what food she could carry without it being noticed. But where would she go? She had no family, no friends, no skills beyond basic housekeeping. The idea of the Turner ranch flashed through her mind, but she quickly dismissed it. She couldn't impose her troubles on strangers, especially when it might bring Pearson's wrath down upon them. As Sophia contemplated her limited options, a sharp knock at the front door startled her from her thoughts. She hesitated, then went to answer it, finding Harold Whitman on the doorstep, his expression grim. "Mrs. Pearson," he said, removing his hat, "I'm afraid I have disturbing news. Your husband's stagecoach was ambushed outside of Tucson. Mr. Pearson is dead." The world seemed to tilt beneath Sophia's feet. "Dead?" she echoed, unable to process the word. "Yes, madam. Apparently the coach was carrying a significant amount of cash from the bank. The driver was killed as well. I'm very sorry." Sophia gripped the doorframe for support. I don't know what to say." "There's more," Whitman continued, glancing past her into the house. "May I come in?" Once seated in Pearson's parlor, the attorney cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Mrs. Pearson, I regret to inform you that your husband was deeply in debt." "What?" Sophia stared at him in disbelief. "But the bank was failing," Whitman finished for her. "Pearson had been making risky investments for years. The cash he was carrying to Tucson was actually meant to pay off certain creditors who were growing impatient." "I don't understand what this means for me," Sophia said, though a sickening suspicion was already forming. Whitman shifted awkwardly. "The house, the bank, everything will be sold to satisfy the debts. As for you—" He hesitated. "Mr. Jasper Wilson has expressed interest in, assuming responsibility for you." "Jasper Wilson," Sophia repeated, her blood running cold. Wilson owned the saloon in town, a seedy establishment that also served as a brothel, if the rumors were to be believed. "Yes," Whitman confirmed, unable to meet her eyes. "He's willing to take on a portion of Pearson's debt in exchange. The arrangement would be similar to the one that brought you here from Tucson." "I'm to be sold again." Sophia's voice was flat. "It's a matter of legal debts, Mrs. Pearson," Whitman said defensively. "The agreement that transferred you from Miller's estate to Mr. Pearson included provisions for such circumstances." Sophia rose from her chair, surprising even herself with her steadiness. "When?" "Wilson expects to collect you tomorrow morning," Whitman said, also standing. "I suggest you use today to prepare your belongings. I'm truly sorry, Mrs. Pearson. The frontier can be a harsh place for a woman alone." After Whitman left, Sophia stood in the silent house, her mind racing. Being sold to Jasper Wilson was unthinkable. The man had a reputation for cruelty, and the girls who worked in his establishment were little more than slaves. She had to leave immediately. With renewed urgency, Sophia finished packing her meager possessions. The money she had saved wouldn't get her far, but perhaps it would be enough to reach the next town. From there, well, she would figure that out when the time came. As evening approached, Sophia heard another knock at the door. Fearing it might be Wilson come early, she hesitated before approaching cautiously and peering through the curtained window. Her breath caught when she recognized Zachary Turner standing on the porch. She opened the door just enough to see him properly. "Mr. Turner, this isn't appropriate." "I know," he said, his expression grave. I've just heard about Pearson. I wanted to offer my condolences." "Thank you," Sophia replied stiffly, unsure of his true purpose. Zachary glanced over his shoulder before speaking again, lowering his voice. "I've also heard about Wilson's arrangement with Whitman." Sophia's cheeks burned with humiliation. News travels fast in small towns. "Mrs. Pearson, Sophia," Zachary said urgently, using her first name for the first time. "You can't go to Wilson. You know what kind of man he is, what he'll expect from you." "I have no intention of going to him," she replied quietly, "but I have few options." Zachary's face showed visible relief. "I came to offer help. My family's ranch I couldn't possibly impose," Sophia interrupted. "You've been kind, Mr. Turner, but this isn't your problem." "It became my problem the moment I saw how Pearson treated you," he said firmly, "and it's not an imposition. My mother needs help with the house, and we can provide you with a safe place to stay until you decide what you want to do next." Sophia hesitated, torn between desperate need and ingrained propriety. What would people say? "People will talk no matter what you do," Zachary replied with a sad smile. "But at my family's ranch, you'll be treated with respect. That's more than Wilson will offer." After a moment of internal struggle, Sophia nodded. "When should I leave?" "Now," Zachary said urgently. "Wilson's been drinking at his saloon all evening, boasting about his new acquisition. I wouldn't put it past him to come for you tonight." Fear propelled Sophia into action. She retrieved her packed bag and a shawl, then followed Zachary to where he had tethered his horse behind the house, away from prying eyes. "We'll ride double," he explained, mounting first and then extending his hand to help her up behind him. "Hold on tight." Sophia hesitantly wrapped her arms around his waist, acutely aware of the impropriety of their situation. But as they galloped away from Pearson's house, away from a future with Jasper Wilson, she found she couldn't regret her decision. They rode through the gathering darkness, taking a circuitous route to avoid being seen leaving town together. Sophia's heart pounded with each hoofbeat, expecting at any moment to hear shouts of pursuit. But there was only the sound of the wind and the steady rhythm of the horse beneath them. After nearly an hour of riding, they crested a small hill, and Sophia saw lights glowing warmly in the distance. As they drew closer, she made out a large white farmhouse with a red barn, just as Zachary had described. Several smaller outbuildings clustered nearby, and fenced pastures stretched into the darkness beyond. "Welcome to Turner Ranch," Zachary said over his shoulder as they approached. The front door of the house opened before they reached it, spilling golden lamplight across the yard. A woman stood silhouetted in the doorway, and as they dismounted, she hurried down the steps to meet them. "Zach, we were getting worried," she called, then stopped short when she saw Sophia. "Oh, you must be Mrs. Pearson." "Mother, this is Sophia Nielson," Zachary said, deliberately using her maiden name. "She needs our help." Martha Turner was a handsome woman in her 50s with the same striking blue eyes as her son. She quickly assessed the situation and nodded decisively. "Of course. Come inside, dear. You look exhausted." Inside the house, Sophia was introduced to Zachary's father, James Turner, a tall, weathered man with a quiet dignity. If either of the elder Turners had reservations about their son bringing home the banker's widow in the middle of the night, they didn't show it. "We've heard about your situation, Mrs. Nielson," James said kindly. "You're welcome to stay with us for as long as you need." "I can't thank you enough," Sophia replied, overwhelmed by their kindness. "But I should explain Jasper Wilson believes he has a claim on me when he discovers I'm gone." "Let Wilson try to come onto my land making demands," James said firmly. "This territory may be rough, but we still have laws. No man can own another person, not anymore. The agreements my late husband made were illegal and immoral, Martha interrupted gently. No court would enforce them, dear. Sophia wanted desperately to believe them, but years of hardship had taught her that life rarely offered such simple solutions. Still, for tonight at least, she was safe. Martha showed her to a small but comfortable bedroom on the second floor. "Get some rest," she said, patting Sophia's hand. "Things will look brighter in the morning." Alone in the room, Sophia sat on the edge of the bed, hardly daring to believe the turn her life had taken. For the first time since leaving Boston, she felt a fragile sense of hope. Morning came with the sounds of a working ranch rooster's crowing, cattle lowing in the distance, the clatter of pots and pans from the kitchen below. Sophia dressed quickly in her one clean dress and went downstairs to find Martha preparing breakfast. "Good morning, dear," the older woman greeted her warmly. "Did you sleep well?" "Better than I have in months," Sophia admitted. "Mrs. Turner, I want to earn my keep while I'm here. I'm a good cook and housekeeper." "I'll be grateful for the help," Martha smiled, "and please call me Martha." Over the next several days, Sophia fell into the rhythm of life at Turner Ranch. She helped Martha with the cooking and cleaning, learned to gather eggs without getting pecked by the temperamental hens, and even tried her hand at making cheese from the milk of the ranch's small dairy herd. Zachary was often busy with ranch work, but he made time each day to check on her, his genuine concern for her well-being a balm to her wounded spirit. They spoke of small things at first: the weather, the animals, books they had read, but gradually, Sophia found herself sharing more of her past. "I came west because there was nothing left for me in Boston," she told him one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset. "My parents died of influenza when I was 18. I worked as a seamstress for a time, but the wages were barely enough to survive on." "So you answered Franklin Miller's advertisement," Zachary said softly. Sophia nodded. "He seemed kind in his letters, said he had a good ranch, needed a wife to make it a home. By the time I arrived in Tucson, he was already ill. We married anyway, he insisted, but he died 2 days later." "And his creditors sold you to Pearson," Zachary finished, his voice tight with anger. "I had no money, no way to get back east." Sophia stared at her hands. It seemed the only option at the time. Zachary reached over and gently covered her hand with his. "You deserved better." The simple touch and the sincerity in his voice brought tears to her eyes. She quickly withdrew her hand, uncomfortable with the unfamiliar feeling stirring within her. Meanwhile, as Sophia had feared, Jasper Wilson had not taken her disappearance lightly. Word reached the Turner Ranch that he was asking questions all over town, growing increasingly angry as days passed with no sign of her. "He came to the bank yesterday," James reported over dinner one evening, "making quite a scene, demanding to know where his property had gone." "What did you tell him?" Sophia asked anxiously. "I told him I had no idea what he was talking about," James replied calmly, "and that if he was referring to Mrs. Pearson, she is a free woman entitled to go wherever she pleases." "He didn't believe you," Zachary said. "It wasn't a question." "No," James admitted. "He threatened to bring the sheriff out here." Martha reached across the table to pat Sophia's hand. "Sheriff Davis is a good man. He won't enforce Wilson's ridiculous claims." Despite their reassurances, Sophia's anxiety grew. She hadn't escaped one form of bondage only to bring trouble to these good people who had taken her in. That night, unable to sleep, she slipped downstairs to make herself a cup of tea. She found Zachary already in the kitchen, staring into a mug of his own. "Couldn't sleep either?" he asked, looking up as she entered. Sophia shook her head. "I keep thinking about Wilson. What if he doesn't give up?" "He will," Zachary said firmly. "Men like Wilson are bullies. Stand up to them and they eventually back down." "I've brought nothing but trouble to your family," Sophia sighed. Perhaps I should move on, go somewhere Wilson won't think to look. Is that what you want? Zachary asked, his voice suddenly tight. To leave? Sophia looked at him, really looked at him, and felt her heart skip. Over the past weeks, Zachary Turner had become important to her in ways she hadn't allowed herself to acknowledge. No, she admitted softly. It's not what I want. Zachary set down his mug and moved toward her, stopping just short of touching her. What do you want, Sophia? The question hung between them, loaded with meaning. Sophia knew her answer could change everything. I want to stay, she whispered. I want to feel safe. I want. She faltered, unable to voice the rest. Zachary reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and brushed a strand of hair from her face. I want that too, he said softly. I want you to stay, to be safe. And I want the chance to show you that not all men are like Miller or Pearson or Wilson. Sophia leaned into his touch, her eyes closing briefly at the gentleness of it. Zachary. A noise from outside interrupted the moment, the sound of horses approaching. Zachary tensed, moving to the window to peer out into the darkness. Riders, he said grimly. 4, maybe 5 of them. Sophia's heart dropped. Wilson, stay here, Zachary ordered, reaching for the rifle that hung near the back door. I'll wake Pa. Minutes later, James and Zachary stood on the front porch, rifles in hand, as the riders approached the house. Martha and Sophia watched anxiously from the parlor window. That's Wilson, all right, James muttered as the men came into the pool of light from the house's windows. And he's brought his thugs with him. Wilson dismounted first, swaggering toward the porch with the confidence of a man who rarely heard the word no. He was a large man with a florid face and expensive clothes that couldn't quite disguise his coarse nature. Turner, he called, I know you've got her. Send her out and we'll be on our way. There's no one here who belongs to you, Wilson, James replied evenly. Turn around and go home. Wilson's face darkened. I paid good money for that woman. Whitman and I had a deal. Whatever deal you made was illegal, Zachary said. Mrs. Nielson is a free woman, not property to be bought and sold. Nielson, is it? Wilson sneered. So you've got her. Hand her over, Turner. I don't want trouble, but I will take what's mine. She's not yours, Zachary replied, his voice cold. She never was. Wilson's hand moved toward his gun. I'm not leaving without her. Inside the house, Sophia couldn't bear it any longer. These good people were risking their lives for her. She moved toward the door, but Martha caught her arm. Don't, the older woman said firmly. That's exactly what he wants. I can't let them get hurt because of me, Sophia protested. Trust my husband and son, Martha replied. They know what they're doing. Outside, the standoff continued. Wilson's men had spread out, hands hovering near their weapons, while James and Zachary remained steady on the porch. This is your last chance, Turner, Wilson growled. Give me the woman, or things will get ugly. The tense silence that followed was broken by the sound of more hoofbeats approaching. All heads turned to see Sheriff Davis riding up, accompanied by 2 deputies. What's going on here, Wilson? The sheriff called as he dismounted. I've come to collect what's mine, Sheriff, Wilson replied. The Turners have stolen my property, the Pearson widow. Sheriff Davis looked to James. That true, Turner? You harboring Mrs. Pearson? Mrs. Nielson is our guest, James replied calmly. She came to us of her own free will, seeking refuge from this man who thinks he can own her. The sheriff sighed heavily. Wilson, we've been over this. I've seen the papers Whitman showed me. They don't hold water legally. You can't buy and sell people in Arizona territory or anywhere else in these United States. Pearson's debts are between you and Pearson's estate, the sheriff interrupted. They have nothing to do with his widow. He turned to the house. Mrs. Pearson, are you in there? Sophia moved to the door, Martha at her side. I'm here, Sheriff. "Madam, are you being held against your will?" "No, sir," Sophia replied firmly. "I'm here by choice. I have no wish to go with Mr. Wilson." The sheriff nodded. "There you have it, Wilson. The lady's made her choice. Now, I suggest you and your men head back to town before I decide to charge you with trespassing and attempted kidnapping." Wilson's face contorted with rage. "This isn't over, Turner," he spat. "Not by a long shot." "Yes, it is," Sheriff Davis said firmly. "Unless you want to spend the night in my jail." For a moment, it seemed Wilson might defy the sheriff, but finally he turned and stomped back to his horse. "Come on, boys. We're wasting our time here." As Wilson and his men rode away, the sheriff approached the porch. "Mrs. Pearson, I apologize for not stepping in sooner. Mr. Whitman came to me this morning, conscience-stricken over his part in this affair. He's withdrawn any legal claims against you." "Thank you, Sheriff," Sophia said, relief washing over her. "No thanks needed, madam. No one should be treated as property." He tipped his hat to her and the Turners. "I'll keep an eye on Wilson for a while, but I suspect his pride's been hurt worse than his pocketbook. He'll find something else to occupy his attention soon enough." After the sheriff and his deputies departed, the Turners and Sophia gathered in the parlor, the tension of the confrontation slowly ebbing away. "Is it really over?" Sophia asked, hardly daring to believe it. "Wilson won't trouble you again," James assured her. "Not with the sheriff watching him." "And not with us protecting you," Zachary added, his eyes meeting hers with a warmth that made her cheeks flush. That night, as Sophia prepared for bed, there was a soft knock at her door. She opened it to find Zachary standing in the hallway, his expression earnest. "I wanted to make sure you were all right," he said, "after everything that happened." "I'm fine," Sophia assured him. "Better than fine, actually. For the first time since coming west, I feel truly free." Zachary smiled, the expression lighting his entire face. "I'm glad. And I meant what I said earlier, Sophia. I want you to stay, not because you need a place to hide, but because—" He hesitated, then continued with quiet intensity, "because I care for you, deeply." Sophia's heart swelled with emotions she had thought long dead. "I care for you too, Zachary. More than I should, perhaps. There's no should about feelings," he said softly. "They simply are." He reached for her hand, and when she gave it willingly, he raised it to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. "Good night, Sophia. Sleep well." As spring turned to summer, Sophia's place at Turner Ranch became more established. The fear of Wilson's return gradually faded, replaced by the comfortable routine of ranch life. She continued to help Martha with the household chores, but she also began to take on more responsibilities, including keeping the ranch's accounts, a skill she had developed during her brief marriage to Pearson. Her relationship with Zachary deepened as well. They spent long evenings talking on the porch, took rides across the ranch's vast acreage, and occasionally ventured into town together, acts that would have been scandalous had Sophia still been considered a widow in mourning, but which the townsfolk seemed to accept with knowing smiles. Sophia noticed that Martha often found reasons to leave them alone together, and James frequently engaged his son in man-to-man talks that left Zachary thoughtful and sometimes flustered. It didn't take much imagination to guess the subject of those conversations. One golden afternoon in late August, Zachary invited Sophia for a ride to his favorite spot on the ranch, a small, secluded meadow beside a creek that ran along the property's eastern boundary. They spread a blanket in the shade of a cottonwood tree and shared the picnic lunch Martha had packed for them. "It's beautiful here," Sophia sighed contentedly, leaning back on her elbows to gaze at the wildflowers dotting the meadow. "So peaceful." "I used to come here as a boy when I wanted to be alone," Zachary said, watching her with a soft expression. I never showed it to anyone else before you." Sophia turned to meet his gaze, touched by the admission. "Thank you for sharing it with me." Zachary reached out to take her hand, his thumb tracing gentle circles on her palm. "Sophia, these past months with you have been the happiest of my life." Her heart quickened at his words. "Mine too." "I know you've been through so much," he continued, his voice growing serious. "And I would understand if you're hesitant to trust again. But I need you to know that I love you, completely and without reservation." Tears sprang to Sophia's eyes at the simple declaration. "Zachary, you don't have to say anything," he rushed to assure her. "I just wanted you to know. And to ask." He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small box. "To ask if you might consider becoming my wife, not because of any debt or obligation, but simply because we choose each other." He opened the box to reveal a delicate gold ring with a small pearl nestled in the center. It was simple but beautiful, much like the love that had grown between them, unadorned but genuine. Sophia looked from the ring to Zachary's hopeful face, her heart so full it seemed it might burst. This was nothing like the business arrangement with Franklin Miller or the cold transaction with Thomas Pearson. This was love freely given and freely returned. "Yes," she whispered, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Yes, I will marry you, Zachary Turner." His face broke into a radiant smile as he slipped the ring onto her finger. Then he gathered her into his arms, his kiss gentle at first, then deepening with the passion they had both held in check for so long. When they finally parted, breathless and laughing, Zachary pressed his forehead to hers. "You've made me the happiest man in Arizona territory." "And I'm the happiest woman," Sophia replied, marveling at how completely her life had transformed. From a mail-order bride sold like property to a woman cherished for herself, it seemed almost too much good fortune to believe. They were married on a crisp October day, with the mountains surrounding Springerville painted in autumn gold. The ceremony was held at the Turner Ranch, with nearly everyone from town in attendance, including, to Sophia's surprise, Harold Whitman, who came to offer sincere apologies and good wishes. Sheriff Davis gave the bride away, a role he accepted with solemn dignity. Martha Turner cried happy tears, and James Turner beamed with pride as his son promised to love, honor, and cherish Sophia for all the days of their lives. Jasper Wilson had left Springerville the month before, having sold his saloon after a series of unfortunate incidents involving the sheriff and various violations of territorial law. The talk was that he had headed for California, his reputation in Arizona in tatters. As Sophia and Zachary shared their first dance as husband and wife, she looked around at the smiling faces of their guests, people who had become friends and neighbors, who saw her not as someone's possession, but as a woman worthy of respect and belonging. "What are you thinking?" Zachary murmured in her ear as they swayed to the music. "That I never expected to find this," she replied honestly. "Love, family, a true home. You deserve all of it and more," he said, pulling her closer. "And I intend to spend the rest of my life making sure you never doubt that again." In the years that followed, Turner Ranch prospered under Zachary and Sophia's joint management. James gradually turned more responsibility over to his son, while Martha delighted in teaching Sophia the traditions and recipes that had been in the Turner family for generations. When their first child was born, a son they named Samuel James Turner, Sophia felt her life had come full circle. From loss and despair to love and new beginnings, her journey had been difficult, but had led her exactly where she was meant to be. As Arizona territory moved toward statehood, Zachary became increasingly involved in local politics, advocating for the rights of small ranchers and farmers against the encroachment of large cattle companies and railroad interests. Sophia supported his efforts, using her own experiences to speak passionately about justice and freedom at community gatherings. Their family grew with the addition of a daughter, Emily, 2 years after Samuel's birth, and later another son, William. The Turner Ranch expanded as well, acquiring additional acreage and building a reputation for quality cattle and fair business practices. On the 10th anniversary of their wedding, Zachary surprised Sophia with a trip to Boston, her first return to her hometown, since she had left it as a desperate young woman seeking a new life in the West. They visited the graves of her parents, and Sophia was able to make peace with the past that had shaped her. "Are you sad to leave again?" Zachary asked as they boarded the train that would take them back west. Sophia shook her head, slipping her hand into his. "Boston is where I was born, but Arizona is where I found life, where I found you." "Even after everything you went through?" he asked, his eyes searching hers. "Especially after everything," she replied with conviction. "Those experiences led me to you, to our children, to the life we've built together. I wouldn't change a moment of it if it meant risking what we have now." As the train pulled away from the station, carrying them back to their ranch, their children, and the future they continued to build together, Sophia rested her head on her husband's shoulder. Once a mail-order bride sold twice over, she was now and forever a woman who had found true freedom in the arms of the man who had helped her claim it. In Springerville, Arizona Territory, Sophia Nielson Turner had discovered that real love didn't bind, it liberated. And in that liberation, she had finally found her home,